Guild Wars: Sea of Sorrows. Chapter 31. The small group made their way through the ship, ducking from room to room, hiding behind swaying hammocks and piles of cargo. It was fairly easy to avoid the Seraph, who were all rushing to the gun ports and the upper decks to defend the ship. The noble passengers fled through hallways, some screaming, others trying to take command of the situation, mostly by ordering everyone else around. Kobaya ignored them. Tenzin reverted to his military training, bluffing the few soldiers who crossed their path. The Balthazar's trident was as fat on the inside as she'd seemed from without, with layers of labyrinthine passages that led to opulent chambers, private dining areas, and at last, a balcony. Braun looked up, pointing at a lifeboat that hung some distance above them. If we could cut that down, we'd have our way back to the Nomad. The Norn's words met silence. No? The others weren't listening. They were looking out across the ocean, where the armada of ore was under full sail. Though still some distance away, Kobaya could tell it was a massive fleet, larger than he'd ever seen arrayed against Lion's Arch in the past. The Orion ships had blackened hulls dripping with broken coral and clinging barnacles, the wood broken and rotting where the sea had taken her due. Some rose from the waves even as he watched, black sails unfurling with the wind as they broke the plain of seawater. At their fore sailed 3 mighty ships. 2 were Exabecs, ships of ancient ore, with scarlet silk hung in long triangles and lateen sails upon their tilted masts. These were far larger than the Clipper, the Harbinger, that Kobaya had seen in the Fire Island Straits so long ago. These 2 were warships, warded with magic so foul that Kobaya could see the buzz of lightning and the rise of viscous steam wafting from their hulls. The third vessel, the one leading them all, was the Indomitable. At Kobaya's side, Tenzin murmured, "My father told me of the day he fought the Orions at your side, when the Pride captured the Salma's Grace, and then turned to fight the true enemy. He described it to me in great detail. Even though he'd fought waves of their ships defending Lion's Arch, he told me that the first time you see them, the first time you realize that dead ship is more than a fanciful name, you're never the same." The Cryadan had gone pale, his eyes wide and staring at the dark vision on the horizon. "Don't worry," Kobaya gulped, trying to calm himself even as his knuckles turned white on the balcony rail. "You never get used to it." The 2 men shared a terse smile. Creatures with wings of seafoam and spittle glided above them, distant voices singing maddened, ancient songs. The stink of fetid flesh rolled in on the wind, striking Kabia's nostrils with a fearful stench. In the distance, a swell of magic rolled up like a tide before the 2 Orion galleys. Even from here, Kobaya could see dead men in articulated armor swarming their decks. 60 cannons glowed like demonic eyes, 30 to a side, rolling out thunder and balled lightning from the snarling mouths of their guns. "What are those?" Tenzin pointed, squinting to see them more clearly through the cannon smoke. "They're Orion vessels called Exabecs, like our ships of the line, but instead of cannons, they rely heavily on ancient magic. I've fought one before, about half the size of one of those." "And you defeated it?" the Cryadan asked hopefully. "I defeated one. Half as big," Kobaya repeated. "And it nearly took us without a scratch on its hull." He shook his head warily, watching the massive red-sailed ships cresting the waves amid the Orion armada. "I can't imagine defeating 2 of them that size." Their enchanted guns alone, as if speaking of them had triggered the weapons, one of the Exabecs fired a broadside at a nearby Cryadan brigantine. Green lightning flickered and danced over the water, floating neither high nor low, but rushing forward in a straight line. Like relentless motes of pollen, they raced toward their target, exploding huge sections of its wooden hull from upper deck down to the waterline. From the crackling explosions, Great arcs and tentacles of lightning burst outward to cascade over the deck of the ship. Kobaya could see figures leap from the deck of the Exebec to the brigantine, dark shadows launching themselves onto screaming Cretan sailors. Weapons swung and pistols cracked as howls erupted from the combat. Kobaya could imagine what was happening to those sailors. Flesh melting from electric assaults, souls shriveling. Just like the sailors aboard his ship. Like Tosh and Vost and Sethus. Isai grabbed Kobaya's arm and twisted him to face her. I know what you're thinking. You think it every time the Indomitable is part of an attack? Don't look, Kobaya. Those things aren't your friends. He stared at her, trying to pull his thoughts away. But all he could see was death. A death he'd escaped. A fate that had taken his friends and turned them into monsters. They were, he whispered. You aren't responsible for their deaths, Kobaya, Isai said, her hands bracing his shoulders. Don't think about the dead. Concentrate on the living. We need you. I won't give up if you don't. He blurted the words without thinking, and his face reddened with the admission. Ideal, she said immediately, and smiled. Despite everything, so did he. Braun and Grim had climbed up onto the rails of the balcony, untying the boat above from its moorings. As the little boat fell, they pushed it out, away from the Balthazar's trident, fighting with gravity and balance to make sure it didn't crash against the balcony, get stuck on a porthole, or crack its keel falling into the water. Unfortunately, in the tumult, Braun slipped off the balcony, arms spinning over the railing. He tumbled, howling all the way down into the waves. When he came up again, the mustached Norn threw his hand over the rowboat's side and waved. The Norn's smile faded as he cast a look back at the two doomed ships. The nomads waiting. Come, let us away. The small craft made good time, plowing through rising waves in the gray of a cloud-covered morning. When they reached the Nomad 2, Isaiah's crew was rushing about in a furor, loading the cannons and readying her wide sails. Her bosun stood at the gunwale, a thin, reedy woman whom Isaiah greeted as Raleigh. She had neither Virid's creepy style nor Henst's burly sense of threat, but carried herself with the chilly, straightforward efficiency of a schoolmarm. Captain! Raleigh grasped Aya's hand and helped her up onto the deck. We received a message from the Shining Blade to expect you. I've never known them to lie, but I have to say I didn't believe it until I saw the rowboat approaching. Braun boosted Kobaya up, helping him scramble aboard the Nomad 2. Tenzin followed, and after him, the two Norn climbed up as easily as if they were scaling cliffs in the Shiverpeak Mountains. Even so, Prince Adair left several of his guard aboard the ship to watch us. We watched them to unconsciousness with belaying pins and detained them in the hold. I hope that's acceptable. I'd have thrown them over the side, armor and all, Isai growled. She paused to sigh and rubbed her eyes with a shaking hand. No, I wouldn't have. But I'd have wanted to. That's fine. Rally. Be sure our sailors are armed. Ready the sails, and await my command. Rayleigh hurried off to carry out her orders. Isai turned to Kobaya as a sailor brought him a sword. What do we do? The Cryadan fleet had engaged the Orion Armada but fought in scattered clumps. Here and there, a captain had enough hold over his crew to keep them fighting. But other ships broke the line, fleeing, the rotted ships of ore at their heels. Sail straight for the Orion line. Kobaya drew the sword. We've got to get their attention. Who? Isai's eyebrows shot up. The Cretans or the Orions? Both. We need the Orions to concentrate their fire on the Nomad. And we need the Cretans to see that we can withstand it. If the Cretans get their courage back and start to follow our tactic of assault, we can still turn the tide. What's our tactic? Tenzin had grabbed a long-barreled rifle, packing it with gunpowder, and shot as he listened to Kobaya's plan. Draw their attention and pull them into the city's harbor. Toward Lion's Arch? Grim looked concerned. Toward Claw Island, Kobaya clarified. Toward the guns and the fortifications of the city. Even if the Crittens can't fight worth a damn, the fort can still hold its own. I say considered. There are only two flaws in this plan. 1. The city guns weren't built to hold off a fleet by themselves. They can't load fast enough, and if the dead ships storm the city, they'll get within firing range and be able to blow out the cliffs. That'll be the end of the gunnery emplacements. 2. The Nomad has no elementalists. Those ships wield immense magics. If they catch us, we'll have no defense at all. Kobaya could see only one path through. The Nomad has to close and fight at close range with the Indomitable, he replied. Her guns are larger, but she doesn't have the support of Orion enchantments. If we're brushing her hull, the Exabex won't be able to use their magic against us without damaging their flagship, just like baiting a snowcat. Grim smiled broadly, cracking his knuckles as the Nomad too turned in her traces and spread her sails against the wind. Once you're up against its belly, you can gut it without fear of the claws. Braun frowned. If we have to stay that close, how will we get them to follow us to the city's fortifications? The hooks, I say, snapped her fingers. On one of our last runs, we towed a stranded Aceron paddleship. We ran lines to it, ropes tied off with iron grappling hooks stuck through into their hull. Tenzin, she spun to him, her hair swinging, gray and mahogany, against her muscled back. If we set those grapnels and the harpoon guns, can you hit the Indomitable's low rigging with them? Tangle them around the masts, or sink the hooks into their hatches? I can use a harpoon just fine. It's not so different from a rifle once you have the weight and heft of it. I once used one to bullseye a bosun's pin from 3 ship lengths away. 150 gold. Tenzin tossed back his hair cockily and set the rifle on his shoulder. I'll have to set position somewhere high, maybe up on the yardarm. Keep the hook-loaded guns coming, and I'll see that the grappling irons are placed solidly. With the lines in place, we can tow the Indomitable. Aisei turned back to Kobaya, her gold-green eyes alight. We'll never leave her side. And we'll draw her straight into the city's guns. When we're close to Claw Island, we cut the lines. The Nomad pulls away into the harbor, and the fortress can open fire. Won't the undead sailors cut the lines? Tenzin asked. It's what I'd do. Kobaya shook his head, considering Aisei's idea. They're bloodthirsty. They want us close. One thing I've learned fighting dead ships for so many years is that most Orions don't do a lot of long-term thinking. If they see a target, they attack, and they don't think about much else. Tenzin looked skeptical. But what about leverage? Our ship's smaller. All we'll do is pull ourselves closer to the Indomitable. It won't matter who's towing who so long as we can keep both boats within the current. The Nomad's weight will pull them with us toward the island, Aisei replied. There's another problem, Kobaya said. We need to keep the undead aboard that flagship from slaughtering us all while the Nomad gives her a tow. Leave that to my brother and me. Grim folded his arms, the muscles standing out as if they were carved from granite. While the others were talking, Braun had demanded the sailors bring another massive sword from the Nomad 2's armory to replace the one the Seraph had stripped from him. He slid one hand up the glistening blade, testing the sharpness of the steel. Kobaya turned to the Norn. You think you can keep the undead from swarming our deck? Just tell the sailors to hold their own, Commodore. Grim Svard smiled, tugging on his braided beard. His brother's teeth flashed beneath a thick mustache. We'll do the rest.